Assalamu alaikum everyone. This is Ayman Nazir and welcome to Knowledge Realm. So students, we are studying history of USA. That is very interesting, and in the previous lecture we covered a very huge topic. We studied the Anglo-French wars, and then we studied the 7 years or French and Indian War in detail. We studied what was the conflict between the French people and the English people in North America. Then we studied how they fought and how French were ousted from the American continent, and then we studied the impacts of that war also on America and Britain also. So we studied that topic in detail. That was a very interesting topic. Today, students, we are going to cover an even more interesting topic, interesting and important also. That is American Revolution, or we should say War of Independence of America. Today we're going to cover this topic, and we would study that why Americans revolted against British Crown. So this is going to be very interesting, so stay focused and let's get started. Starting with the brief introduction of American Revolution, students, American Revolution was actually an ideological and political revolution that took place during the late 18th century. It was a revolution to get independence from the British Crown. We all know that British settled 13 colonies in the America along the Atlantic coast, and British was ruling here, and it was extracting raw materials from here, and it was trying to strengthen its empire in Europe economically. So these 13 colonies of British in North America fought a revolutionary war with the mother country. Now from mother country I mean the British Empire in Europe. The war started in 1775 and ended in 1783. Americans presented the Declaration of Independence in 1776. Now Americans wanted independence from their mother country, that is the British Empire, the England in Europe. American got independence from British Crown and established the sovereign United States of America. This was the independence of United States of America, the superpower of the world that we know today. But students, why these people revolted against their mother country, the British Empire? What were the reasons behind this revolution? What were the causes behind this revolution? We would study this revolution in detail. We would study all the events and how they fought this war. But first, we would try to understand that why these people revolted against British Empire. What were the causes behind this revolution, and what were the events that led to this war and revolution? So first we should understand all the causes. Starting with the causes of American Revolution, the first cause of American Revolution was the heavy taxation programs of Britain after the French and Indian War. We all know, we have studied this in the previous lecture in detail, that British Prime Minister William Pitt, he borrowed money from the other empires of Europe at the time to fight this war in North America. He invested in this war, he financed this war, and all this borrowed money accumulated debt on the British Empire. Now, the policy of British Empire of reducing this debt was very unjust. To pay the debt incurred by British government in French and Indian War, British Empire imposed heavy taxation programs on the people of America. Prime Minister George Grenville passed the following acts. These acts: Sugar Act of 1764, Quartering Act of 1765, and Stamp Act of 1765. Stamp Act of 1765 was the most unjust act passed by the British Parliament. Now what was this Sugar Act? Sugar Act was about the imported sugar. It was decided in this act that the American colonies, these colonies would import sugar from Britain, from in Europe, and on this imported sugar these colonies would pay heavy taxes. Why British was doing this? To accumulate the wealth, to reduce the debt, to pay the debt that the British incurred in the war. Then the Quartering Act of 1765, this act stated that the people of North America, they would feed and they would give shelter to the soldiers of British Empire. British Empire actually deployed 10,000 troops in North America for their safety, and British Empire claimed that we have deployed this force for your safety. So now you would give shelter to these people, these soldiers, and you would give food to these people. Now this thing was a burden on the people of North America. This was the Quartering Act of 1765. Then the Stamp Act of 1765. This was the most disturbing, and this act led to protest in America. What was this act about? This act was about the printing of anything on the stamped papers, and these stamped papers actually uh, imposed taxes on the people of North America. So these were actually programs of Britain to accumulate the wealth from the to extract all the money from the North American colonies to pay the debt that the British Empire incurred in the French and Indian War. So these programs were very unjust, and these programs infuriated the colonies. Then students, people started protesting against this Sugar Act and the Stamp Act, and this led to a social unrest, and John Dickinson of Pennsylvania, he wrote the Declaration of Grievances and Rights, and this thing led to the repeal of this Stamp Act. The Stamp Act was repealed in 1766, but then there came Townshend programs. All the tax imposing acts were repealed, but duties were increased by the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Charles Townshend. Charles Townshend was the newly appointed Chancellor of the Exchequer. He repealed all the tax imposing acts, but he imposed duties on all the imports. He imposed heavy duties on goods imported from England to America, such as tea, glass, oil, and paper, and these duties were very heavy on these people. Now this was just a change of program. I mean, he repealed the internal taxes, but he imposed the external taxes. Now this was just a change of a strategy, and this thing did not give any relief to the people of North America. This was just another way to extract money from North American colonies. Taxes and duties made people of America disgruntled. Now the people of America, they were not happy with their mother country, and they felt betrayed, and they felt that this is not justice, and they felt that this is unfair treatment with the people of North America. So this was the first cause of the American Revolution. This was the first act of British Empire that created a gap between the colonist and the crown, which means between the people of North America and the British Empire in England. Now the second cause of the American Revolution, mercantilism program of British Empire. Now what is this mercantilism? Mercantilism is actually a political tool, a political policy in which the mother country accumulates wealth from its by the help of its colonies. Accumulation of wealth of mother country by increasing the exports of the country and decreasing the imports of the mother country. So what the Great Britain was doing at the time? Great Britain was actually importing all the raw materials from the colonies, and it was importing these raw material almost free of cost. It did not pay any cost to its colonies because it believed that these colonies are ours, and all the resources are ours, so we do not have to pay, and all the resources and all the precious material that are in these 13 colonies, these things are our own, so we do not have to pay. So Great Britain here, it was importing all the raw materials from these 13 colonies. And here in Great Britain, the people, they had industry, and they manufactured the finished products here, they manufactured finished products here, and those manufactured goods were then exported to the 13 colonies. Now this is the mercantilism program. Increase the exports and decrease the import, and the import would be free of cost, almost the cost would be negligible. This is the mercantilism program. of Great Britain, and this was a strategy to accumulate wealth for the mother country. And the mother country thought that this is justified, and we are just trying to strengthen our empire, and we are doing this at the expense of the colonies. Now, there is nothing wrong with the colonies. This is not unfair with the colonies, because colonies are all our own property, and we can extract all the raw materials. This was the belief of the all the imperial powers at the time. So this mercantilism program of British Empire, this was causing an agitation in the people of North America. British government passed many acts to ensure mercantilism, such as Navigational Act of 1651. Now, what was this Navigational Act? Importation of tobacco from Dutch or Spanish colonies was prohibited. These 13 colonies of Britain were not allowed to import tobacco from Dutch or Spanish colonies. Now, this was a way to control the economic program of these 13 colonies. And who was controlling this? The Great Britain, the mother country. In mercantilism, the imperial power, the mother country, controls all the economic policies of its colonies. So these things were creating a rage and fury in the people of North America in the 13 colonies. Then there came Enumerated Commodities Act of 1660. Certain commodities such as sugar, tobacco, indigo, cotton and dyes shall not be exported to any other country than England. Now this once again here shows that how Britain was trying to control the export of the colonies. This Act, Enumerated Commodities Act of 1660, it said that sugar, tobacco, indigo, cotton and dyes, the 13 colonies cannot export these commodities to any other country than England. Only England has right on these commodities. Then Staple Act of 1663, all the exports from Europe should be brought to English port and pay duty and then be reshipped to America. Now this was another way to accumulate money from the North American colonies. Then Duty Act of 1673, all the captains of English ships were required to export to only England or they will pay high penalties. Now this thing imposed another restriction on the people of the 13 colonies. The captain of English ship, they were not allowed to export to any other country here in Europe. They were not allowed to export in France or in any other land. Only the England. England was their market for raw materials. Then Molasses Act of 1773, English colonies were not allowed to import molasses from French colonies. Now this was the program of mercantilism of British Empire, and this thing agitated the people of North America, and it created a rift between the colonist and the crown. Two more causes behind the American Revolution. Students, after eliminating the French from the American continent, the British Parliament started acting like an authoritative regime in the North America. It took some authoritative steps and it started behaving in an autocratic way. For example, in 1765, the New York colony, it refused to quarter any soldiers in this colony, and it did not want to comply with the Quartering Act of 1765 because it was very burdensome and they could not afford to give shelter and feed these people, the soldiers of British Empire. So the British Parliament, it punished the New York colony and it suspended the Assembly of New York colony. This was an autocratic act of this Parliament of Britain. Now, these acts are actually generally not taken by the democratic government, and the British Parliament started acting in an autocratic way. Then the Boston Massacre of March 5, 1770, the most famous, very famous massacre. We all know, I don't know if you have studied this or not, but on March 5, 1770, 5 people were killed in a massacre. Now, these people were protesting against the taxes imposed by the British Parliament, the Sugar Act, the Stamp Act, and all these Molasses Act and such acts. They were protesting against these acts, and they were killed by soldiers. Thomas Paine, who was the commander of soldiers at the time in Massachusetts, he ordered his soldiers to open fire on unarmed people of Boston. And this thing led to a massacre, and 5 people were killed in this massacre. This event is known as Boston Massacre of March 5, 1770. This was another autocratic act of Parliament of British Empire in North America. This thing created a rift between the colonists and the crown, and it agitated the the people of North America, and it infuriated the people of North America. They started believing that, okay, now the British Empire is trying to kill us. We are just protesting against their autocratic acts. We are just protesting against their unfair acts, the Cottering Acts, the Sugar Act. We are just trying to express that we are not happy with this and we cannot afford this. And now you are killing us. The Boston Massacre of March 5, 1770, they said that, okay, now you're massacring us, so we would revolt and we would get independence from this authoritative regime of British Empire in North America. Then another very important cause of American Revolution, fear of French strangulation was eliminated. French was eliminated from America in French and Indian War 1754 to 1763. We have studied this, how all the American colonies, the 13 colonies, got united in this war, French and Indian War, and how they fought and how they eliminated this fear of French. They fought, and this thing actually encouraged Americans to stand against the British masters also. They started believing that, okay, if we can fight against French, why can't we fight against the British masters? We can oust French people from American continent. We can eliminate British crown also from this continent, and we can live independently and freely and happily, and we can maintain a peaceful society in America. And we should fight for our independence. So the elimination of French from this continent and the French and Indian War actually increased the morale of the people of North American colonies. This was a very important event in the life of the North American colonies. Another cause behind this American Revolution, generational gap. Students, we all know, we have studied this, that the British people, they came to North America in 1609, more than a century ago. Then they started living there, and the people who moved from Britain Empire, from England to North America, they were loyal to their mother country because they knew their mother country. They had been there in the past. Then they started living in North America. They got settled there, they started their families there, and they lived there for more than a century. So there was a change in attitude of colonists due to generational change. The people who moved to America in 1609, they died, and then their children and then their generations, they did not know anything about their mother country. They had never been there, and they did not feel any patriotism for their mother country, the Britain. They got attached to their new state, that is America. They got attached to that place where they were born, where they lived, where they spent their whole life. So they felt patriotism for America and not the mother country, because they had lived in America for more than a century and they spent all their life in America. So they started thinking that why not just get rid of this crown and live here happily and live here independently. So the generational gap and the change in generation was actually one of the major reasons behind this American Revolution. These people, the new generation, they did not know anything about their mother country, so they revolted. Then the last cause of the American Revolution, Enlightenment. We all know that it was an era of enlightenment. The 17th century and the 18th century in Europe, this era is known as the era of enlightenment, and the people of America, such as George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, John Dickinson, These people were enlightened and these people were inspired by the philosophers of Enlightenment era, such as John Locke. John Locke presented the philosophy of liberalism and state of nature. John Locke presented the concept of democracy, and he argued that human is in perfect state of nature, that it does not need any monarch or king. So the people of America, they started feeling inspired with all these philosophies, and they believed that, okay, why do we have to keep this burden of a crown on ourselves? So we should just get independence and we should just revolt. Then another scholar of the time, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, he gave the concept of direct democracy that inspired Americans. He believed that there should be democracy and the consent of the governed people. So the American people, they say that the British Parliament, it does not seek or consent, so we should revolt against such people, against this tyranny. They believe that taxation without representation is an atrocity, because we all know that there was no representation of American colonies in the British Parliament, yet they were taxed, heavily taxed. And the people of America, they believed that taxation without representation in the British Parliament is not fair, and this thing infuriated Americans because these people were inspired by the philosophies of Enlightenment scholars. So all these were the causes of the American Revolution. Today we studied that why the people of America felt the need to revolt against British Empire. We studied the reasons behind American Revolution, the causes of the American Revolution. There were the heavy taxation programs of British Empire, the autocratic act of British Empire, the Boston Massacre, and the generational gap, the Enlightenment, and everything. We studied these causes of the American Revolution. I hope that everything is clear. So today we studied the causes of American Revolution. We could not cover the events of American Revolution and the War of Independence. That part of American Revolution is also important and we would cover that in future. So there is no need to worry. We would cover, inshallah, I will make a video on all the events of American Revolution and War of Independence. But today we have covered a lot. So thank you so much for listening to me today. Don't forget to like this video, comment on this video, and share also with your friends who are preparing for CS examination. Don't forget to subscribe the channel Knowledge Realm. Thank you so much, and Allah Hafiz for today.